Janet, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Janet Murray. So I am a strategic marketing consultant. I do a few other things as well, which perhaps we can get into during the session. Yeah, what else do you want to know?
Anything that you want to tell us? So we came across each other on an Instagram post, didn't we? So shall we start there? Because we've both got businesses, and I'm assuming that it's a mutual connection because I was tagged on your post by a woman that I know. I'm assuming you know her as well.
Yeah, I think she's a former client, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I say, as we get into it, I could probably tell you more about my business, but yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah, quite a long-standing.
So it's a contentious issue, which was completely normal until just a few years ago, and now women are getting cancelled for talking about it. So do you want to talk about the post that I was tagged on? Yeah,
Yeah,
tell us the story.
So, where should I start? So actually, last November, it starts there. So, or even earlier than that. So I have been growing increasingly concerned over the last few years, as many women have, about their sex-based rights and their language. And admittedly, I think I was a little bit late to the party.
I was very late.
Yeah, I think I missed it, and it's not an excuse but an explanation. But I was a journalist for many years, and so I had to kind of watch every news program, listen to listen to question time, like be on Twitter all the time. And I think when I moved out of that, it was about 10 years ago. I still followed the news, but I wasn't quite so obsessive about everything that was going on.
Yeah. You wanted a break from it, I would have guessed.
Yeah. So I think I was late to the party, but I started to hear more. I think how I found you actually was I read about. It's Lindsay Smith, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Newcastle FC, the lady who had, been banned from her beloved football club for saying that she thought they were, too sexist, and it's a totally controversial thing to say. So I think I remember, seeing that. And basically I was listening to all the podcasts, reading all the books, following it all on Twitter, and thinking this is bad. And the more I started to understand about it, and I started to understand that the consequences were not just, oh, it's a bit annoying, people starting to call women egg carriers or ovary habits or whatever, or pregnant persons or people, as we'll get onto. But that's
what I thought it was at first. It was just like, that's weird.
Yeah,
I didn't think much of it.
I thought to myself, I'm a tolerant, inclusive person. I don't want people to feel upset or left out, or I always make room for everybody. I don't think I'm phobic of it, anything in particular, but I started to understand that this was different, and that actually it was quite concerning. And it was actually, this is probably a really common story, but it started to like overtake it was like all I could think about, and I was slightly obsessed with it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I could tell that, I was looking at cases like Sal Grover, J.K. Rowling, who's a lady who wrote Hounded, Jenny, what's her surname? But I was just seeing.
I don't know that book.
Well, women of a certain age, I forget words all.
Yeah, I do as well.
Oh God, it'll come to me in a minute. But I was starting to see what happened to women who spoke out, and Lily Hill is another one, and how spectacularly they were cancelled and their livelihoods. Graham Linehan, obviously not a woman, but somebody whose career has been destroyed. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is really controversial. And I got in a bit of a row online maybe a couple of years ago when I was retelling what I thought was a funny story about my daughter coming home and talking about a non-binary friend, and she wanted to stay over at someone's house. And I was saying, well, either they were a boy or a girl, because they had a name that was kind of like could have been either. And she's like, well, they're non-binary. And I was like, well, I still need to know whether they're a boy or a girl, because you want to go around the house and stay over there, and like you're both underage, Yeah. Anyway, I sort of shared this as a kind of amusing anecdote on Facebook, and oh my God, that was really when I realised, this is probably before I did all that, but I realised that, oh my God, like people think this is more important than protecting an underage child. Basically, it started to dawn on me. They think that, somebody's gender identity is more important than, understanding who your child's spending time with, and to underage children as well. So anyway, so it was all
It's a
bubbling up.
safeguarding thing, isn't it? They're not bothered about safeguarding. It's more
Yeah,
about
thank
getting
God.
the...
No, don't worry about that. Or
Yeah.
don't worry about, do you need to have the talk with your teenage daughter about contraception or, underage sex or whatever? Don't worry about any of that. Just worry about people's feelings about what they're called. So I started to think, oh, this is like a hornet's nest. And it was bubbling up and building up inside me. So at the end of last year, I wrote something I was trying to work it out because I've got this business and this profile online. I've built up a bit of a platform. And I thought, I don't know how this all fits. And if I suddenly start banging on about gender identity, I just don't know if this fits and whatever. So I went over onto Substack and I wrote an article, which I've since published on LinkedIn, which was called, "What Does It Mean to Be a Courageous Woman in 2024?" And I kind of say stuff like, when I was a kid, I was 10 in 1984. And I thought like, Annika Rice, she was courageous.
Yeah.
She's helicopter running, or
Yeah, I remember that.
Doing Band-Aid, or like, who was the other person I mentioned? I remember just talking about, people who hid Jewish people from the Nazis, whatever, that's that's what I thought was courageous. And, the Midas strike, but I don't remember feeling, even though that was like back in the 80s, I don't remember feeling like, I knew there was like sexism and that some men got paid more than women or whatever, but I didn't feel like I couldn't say, like I didn't feel like I couldn't speak up and say what was on my mind and ask for more, ask for different. But here we are in a world where if you say, actually really prefer not to share a changing room or a bathroom with a man, or I'd actually really would prefer it if men didn't compete in women's categories, or, men didn't get, how this is considered to be courageous. I said, you could lose your job, and so I just wrote this piece about it. It was very sort of mild. At the end of it, I said, it took me the longest time to realise that I wasn't a bigot, and that I wasn't, because I'm, maybe you feel like this too. Maybe you keep questioning yourself and think, have I missed something here? So that was it. But what I realised on Substack was, I realised that I was just like, I was preaching to the converted, really. And I felt like, because of the stuff that I'd shared on my own Facebook and seeing the reaction, I felt like the people that I could probably reach were the people who were kind of at that, well, what's the harm in saying a pregnant person, if it makes people feel better, or what's the harm, those are sort of people who haven't thought it through. They haven't done the logical, steps of the legal implications. So I thought, I don't think I'm going to carry on with this Substack because I'm not doing any good here, because people are sending me messages and saying, well done. But so cut a long story short, I decided for my own business here, I'm going to do a 30-day video, 30 days of imperfect video, because I haven't created any video for ages. Just going to challenge myself to do a little video.
Just finished my 30-day challenge.
Yeah, and I'll tell my clients, what I learned. And that's what I would say to a client as a marketing specialist. You can't come up with a strategy unless you've actually tested some things out and you say, here it all goes. So I thought, I'm going to try and be a bit more authentic and bring a bit more of me into it. So I was listening to this podcast that I've been listening to for ages that I really, really like a few weeks back. And I heard the opening line, and it said, in this podcast series, we will be investigating the impact on maternal health of something like challenges in maternal health on pregnant people. And I just turned it off, because I just thought, and to give you a bit of history, I've had infertility, I've had miscarriages, I've had a preterm birth, very, very premature baby, I've had an ectopic pregnancy, I've had a very rare ectopic pregnancy, that only like 1 in 1% of 1% get, I've had all of the gynae things going on. And for me, it just feels like an insult to hear that. But at the same time, with my marketing hat on, I was thinking, well, isn't it interesting? Because I was like, just turn it off, don't want to hear it. I completely went off that. But I knew someone else would listen to that and say, oh, isn't that nice how inclusive they're being? And that message would resonate. So I thought, I'm going to make a video about this. Sort of talking about marketing, appel and retract, whatever. I knew there would be some, negativity. There was no way there wasn't going to be. But I didn't expect what happened. So I did the post and had got a lot of nice, supportive comments from women saying, thank God for you speaking up from this. It's just awful that we can't say this and people are taking away the language that describes our own bodies, whatever. But then they came, and it was a former client of mine, And she was like, I'm disgusted by you. I've never, I never buy, I feel disgusted I ever invested in your products or services. You make me sick. She actually removed that ever since. Basically accusing me of being, transphobic, all the usual stuff. And then a few other people came and they were having a go as well. However, I'm a believer in free speech. It's not nice to be called those things, but I just responded as calmly as I could and made my argument back to them. And some of the stuff I heard, I actually made a list of it that I put in my Instagram stories of the ridiculous things I was arguing. Like, well, what about pregnant children? What about
pregnant children?
Yeah. What? So that came up a lot. What about children who are pregnant? What about what was the other thing?
Girls.
Yeah, girls. Yeah, young women.
I'm trying to work out what they're getting at because I've not heard, I've not come across that before.
Answer
pregnant
that
children.
What about transgender? See, I get confused. What about transgender men? I said, well, that's okay because they're biological women.
That's a woman.
It's biological women. They may be, identifying as a man, but they are a biological woman. So it wouldn't be a problem if it said pregnant woman. If they were a transgender man and had
only women get pregnant, so
that's still the language that would make sense to them. Well, you're so offensive, you're so this is so on it all went. So that was not nice, some of the comments, but fair enough. And the worst one actually was about saying I was weaponizing my miscarriages. So it was saying like,
what?
Yeah,
so you're talking about your own experience and that's
weaponizing my baby loss. So anyway, so not very nice, but I calmly answered them, all the bonkers arguments, whatever. And because I was using it as an opportunity to keep going through that argument, like we need sex-based language because, if we don't have sex-based language, then we can't protect women's spaces. And so I'm just like calmly kind of going over it again and again.
Yeah. And
anyway, so that was that, but it got a lot of support, but private support. I started getting messages from women going, most of them start, please don't share my name. And I have shared most of them in my Instagram highlights, but I was sharing this like in real time and going like, if you don't think there's a problem here, that people are saying, please don't tell it, because I might lose my job. So anyway, then the next thing, someone sent me some screenshots from an Instagram, from a LinkedIn post. So this lady blocked me, then went over to, people don't understand defamation. I find this quite bizarre, but anyway, went over to LinkedIn, did this massive long post in which she implied I was a Nazi and that I was transphobic and all this kind of stuff. And people don't realise about it is that you don't have to name someone to defame them. They just have to be identifiable. And so it said, I've just watched a video from someone in which they said they didn't like the phrase pregnant person. So I was clearly identifiable enough for somebody who'd seen my video to see this post, put two and two together, numerous people would send me the screenshots. So there's all these people going onto it. I can't see it now because it's blocked, but hundreds of comments. Some people comparing me to Hitler, not me specifically, but my views to Hitler, to Nazi Germany, all the usual things, whatever. So I was screenshot it and put it on Instagram. I screenshot the comments, and then I get women coming to me, you're so out of order by sharing this. Like, well, you've posted it publicly on the internet. Like, you've publicly defined the internet. The only person
there's no responsibility, is there, from these people?
Yeah, and then
everything's everyone else's fault.
They said, and it's really awful that you've screenshot the comments. I said, but they took a decision to say these things. Like, they have to take responsibility for that. So on and on it. Yeah, so on and on it went. And then, so that wasn't nice, but, still getting lots of support from women, mostly privately, a few publicly. And I was sharing all of this stuff in my stories. The more it happened, the more I was like, it was like someone had, like once you've uncorked the bottle, you just can't, it was like years of this kind of almost like rage about it. Anyway, so since then I've continued to make videos about various aspects of it. I made one about why women are afraid, and the fact that women can't speak up about this. Does nobody think that's a problem? I did one where I explained in detail why the problem with pregnancy, the term pregnancy people or person, and I gave an analogy about how when I had my premature baby and there was a breastfeeding room, and I'd already given this example in my Instagram stories. So I was trying to explain that like if we remove those terms, then any person, anyone who says that there a woman can come into that space without anybody's permission or whatever. A man sent me a message and said, well, what if I want to go and see my wife in the breastfeeding room? And I was like, well, why would you want to go into a women's space? And, you know, so there's just like, even like men sort of coming and sort of attacking you. Anyway, so on it rumbles. I'm just trying to think where we are at the moment. And it's been sort of going on for 2 or 3 weeks. And then a few days ago, I made a video. So most of the people who've attacked me, I didn't really know what intersectional feminism was, actually. I educated myself on it, but didn't really know what it was. I mean, I really knew what it was, but I didn't really put the name together. But anyway, so I made this video the other day where I said, you know, most of the people, women who'd attacked me, and men actually, were called themselves intersectional feminists. But where are they when Natalie Barnett, the young black gym owner, is being pilloried for having wanted to have a female-only gym? Where are they when Lindsay Smith is being banned? You know, she's a young lesbian woman being banned from her football club for words, basically, for her opinions. But where are they for the Darlington nurses who have to take a petition to the government and go to court to get a man out of their changing room? And some of those women, you know, they've been questioned on their faith-based beliefs, which also protected characteristic. So this video, I put it on LinkedIn, and I think it got shared by my full status. So that kind of, I imagine, probably encouraged a few other people to share it. And then I very bravely, I was like, should I put it on Twitter? Should I put it on Twitter? And I X, and I did. And then it really popped off on Twitter, and that's only yesterday.
Okay.
Lots of support, lots of people saying thank you, well done for speaking up. But so this is, you know, how nasty it can get. Women popped up and said, oh, I saw that you did this podcast a few years ago. I interviewed a client of mine who has 2 adult transgender children. And this was the moment that I was like, this is kind of the thing that I feared the most, not because I think it's anything to be ashamed of you not understanding something completely and then understanding it. No problem about that. I knew the podcast was there. I knew that somebody might find it and I would never remove it because it would be freedom of speech. They were saying to me that I was a grifter and that basically I'd use my marketing skills to promote like children being mutilated or whatever they were saying. Basically, I haven't earned a penny for weeks. You know, this has just overtaken my whole life, as it does, you know, when this happens to women. And yeah, every time I try and get my act together, I think I really ought to go back to doing what I you know, get paid to do. Somebody sends me another screenshot or another picture or whatever, because of course, you know, everybody's really engaged and you know, wants to talk about it. And I just went back to them and said that, you know, that podcast is there. If anybody wants to go and hear where my understanding of the issue was then, they're welcome to go and do that. I did actually a more recent interview with Connie Shaw about her being sacked from Lead Student Radio. I mean, even that, I got some flack for that, but not on this sort of scale. I've even got some flack for interviewing her and giving her a platform. That was just before Christmas.
Like women as well, like
so women who just said I was platforming transphobic people and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but that was kind of like, you know, I was a journalist for many years. I'm not like it's not my first radio kind of thing. So that was okay, but it's just like on another level. And they were sort of almost like demanding that I go back to this lady that I interviewed and tell her, you're wrong. You're like, and I was just like, what? In what world would that be helpful? If I did that, that would be as bad as like, you know, and also, rightly or wrongly, I have a lot of empathy for people in that situation, and I couldn't guarantee I might not have, you know, how I would react if it was one of my children, you know. And so that's been more of a shock, actually, sort of getting flack from people who share your beliefs for, you know, suggesting that you're grifting or whatever, or because I've not tried to hide anything. Sorry, I feel like I've just talked, but
that's fine.
That's probably the latest.
You've got a lot to say.
Yeah, that's kind of where we are at the moment. So, you know, lots of support. LinkedIn's really surprised me, actually, pleasantly, how willing people are to speak up, which is good on a professional platform.
I think I've just found that in since I stood in the election, I've started looking for women who are speaking out. So I've made a beeline for Maya Forstater and the women in Australia, actually. So Sal Grover and Moira Demon and all of them. And then from there, I connected with other Australian women, and then like people who are closer to home as well. So
Yeah.
it's once you find a few women, then you find more. And that's how algorithms work, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if you're not connected to anybody, then it feels like you're the only one.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, I feel like I've talked non-stop.
That's okay. Yeah, but that's just in the last few weeks then.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
It's a lot that's happened. So
yeah.
how are you coping with it? How are you feeling? I don't know if anyone's asked you that recently.
I made a video about this yesterday. Actually, one of my male friends sent me a message which made me laugh to say, how are you doing, whatever. And then he said, because you're my favourite wee haver. Yeah, I said, you've got to keep a sense of humour about these things, haven't you? But yeah, I made a video about this. There's only two things that have upset me. So I had a message from a school friend who basically said, I was getting fed up because they kept going on to my posts and just like posting really like, and really sort of negative stuff. And so they sent me this message in the end saying, I don't feel like I know you anymore. And, your views are hateful or whatever. And that hurts, I think, because when someone's known you since you were about 16 and, they know what kind of person you are, they know what's in your heart, and I disagree with them on certain subjects, but that's okay with me. I don't think that anyone who disagrees with me is a Nazi or Hitler or right wing or, I just like, I accept other people might have different views. And then this thing with these girls calling me a grifter, these girls, he's like, that's, and what I was more worried about is I'm more worried about people like that going to my former client who I interviewed and harassing her because when I said that, I said, I think it would be unkind. They were like, why is it unkind? I'm like, I just don't see how that would help anyone just don't see how that would help anyone in any way. And I have no interest in people being humiliated or being harassed because I've been on the receiving end of that. And I wouldn't want that to happen to someone else.
No, of course. So yeah, it is really, really challenging with people who have children in that situation. Because but they're being manipulated and going along with it.
Yeah, it's really tough because I have a lot of empathy because when you're a mother and your child comes and they say they're unhappy, you want to make them happy. So I don't have I wouldn't say that these are grown up children as well.
Yeah,
who can make decisions.
You've got very little control over your children when they're adults. Well,
yeah,
you can't tell them what to do anymore.
Yeah, I have had people contact me privately. So somebody contacted me privately and said that, but not be too specific about the specifics of it, but that it had broken their family apart because an older child had said that they were, I think it's non-binary actually, and it had caused a rift in the family. And, I can totally see why people would want to avoid that and would want to keep contact with, the children. I think it's easy to look from the outside and say, oh, I would do this and I would do that.
Yeah.
I have great empathy for it, and I wouldn't want to harass or shame anyone.
I think there's another situation where children are young and it's actually the mother pushing it onto the child. I think that's different to what you're describing. This is a woman with adult children. And she's trying to make the best out of a difficult situation. And I think it's I think in general criticism of mothers is it's always been there, but my God, on TikTok and it's just non-stop. It's horrendous. Like let's just take a step back and try and help each other instead of criticizing just because someone's doing it differently to you.
But that's exactly it, isn't it? It's a sort of double standard, and
it's so hard to be a mother. You do what it takes to get through the day sometimes.
And in speaking up about it. I feel in speaking up publicly about it, this person, I'm quite sure, hates my guts now. And they probably feel that I've double crossed them. They probably feel that and I understand that. I totally understand that. I don't have any,
It's this narrative though, isn't it? That we are somehow harmful and we want them dead and we want all this stuff. And actually it's not that at all.
Yeah.
We actually care about them and we don't want them to be harmed.
Yeah. And what this podcast that I recorded, the angle was more about what happens when your kids come home and give you news that you weren't expecting, and how do you move through that. And without going into the specifics of it, this person they were in quite a different place themselves, I think, at that time compared to where they are now. And yeah, I just don't think there's any justification for kind of harassing or abusing anyone for that. It gets none of us anywhere.
Well,
but the other
for anything really, abuse isn't going to help anything.
No, I just don't see how that would help. And it actually stopped me because I had a personal relationship with this person and I like them. I like them a lot. That for the longest time, it was really difficult for me to speak up not because of this podcast, but it was, I had a personal relationship with them. I like them.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be saying something that's going to upset or offend them and make them feel like I think their kids are weird or, and these are real problems. And if I'd said, oh, I'm not going to speak up about this because I'm worried that someone will find this podcast and they'll go, oh, you did this 2 years ago. Like, that's another woman not speaking up, isn't it? And so I went into it knowing that might happen, and that if it happened, I would, respond to it as honestly as I could. But I had to kind of always draw a line under it, because I also don't think it's right to discuss someone's personal situation and without, I don't know. I think there's people out there who are a lot harder than I am in that sort of sense, and I understand why as well, because women have been ignored and talked over, and for so many years now. I think Alistair Campbell, just after the election, I don't know why we couldn't just get around and sit around a table and talk nicely about this. And I'm like,
I think women have been trying to.
Where have you been for like so many years? Like, the changing debate, you got a lot of flack for that, but
yeah, I think a lot of the men in politics just don't understand it. And I know certainly someone else I know mentioned it in I think it was some like local politicians for reform. I think that was the context. And they said, oh, well, that's a fringe issue. And just said to them, well, if you think 51% of the population is a fringe issue, then I don't know what to say to you. So I think they are taking it more seriously now. Yeah. Because they're starting to realise that actually, and that's what people think, oh, you're obsessed and it's just a few people, like, it doesn't make any difference. But they've managed to change the law and they've managed to silence women, and women are being threatened for voicing genuine concerns and for safeguarding children and for trying to protect children. And that's just wrong. We can't have that in a civilized society. We need to be able to say what the dangers are for women and children.
Yeah. Without risk of, I find it incredible that I can share, and I've done it consistently over and over, how many messages I've had from women saying, I had messages from women saying, I've been warned that if they catch me saying stuff on social media again, I'll be given the hoof. I've had women say that they've seen other people in their organisations get sacked, so they can't. I had a woman who messaged me and said that her people have actively stopped buying from her, so she's got a creative business and people have actively stopped being her customer because of it. And even she's gone to exhibit events and people have told her she's no longer welcome, and which we've seen in some of the higher profile cases as well. And that's the thing, like, that, and this is not to take away from any of the higher profile cases, but those of us who are kind of following it and intently know about the Salgrovers and Graham Linehan and J.K. Rowling and all those kind of high profile cases. But I don't think what gets heard are the more everyday stories about the women who they need a job, so they've just had to stay quiet, and they They can't.
And I do know women in business who say that they agree, but they can't say anything because it would destroy their business because of the sector that they work in.
Yeah, they say they work in an industry where they know that if they were to say it, I've definitely lost business. There's no doubt about it. People have said it distinctly.
I think you will attract business as well, though, because this is quite a big community of women who are switched on to this now.
Yeah. What was your sort of peak moment?
Well, it was actually Kelly J. Keane, I think. So I think I'd seen dribs and drabs and not thought anything of it. But then a clip went viral where she was saying that the police had been at her door for being untoward about paedophiles. And it was actually my husband who'd seen it. And he said, "Oh, have you seen this woman?" So I looked it up and found the clip. And then I was trying to find out what it was all about. But Kelly J talks very much about what's happening in the moment. So it didn't make any sense to me. There was like no context. Do you know what I mean? So then I went, my friend said, "Oh, Kelly J's coming to Newcastle for Let Women Speak. Does anyone want to come?" in a Facebook group that I was in. So I went along. It was just me and her. And then we met someone else who was there as well, that she knew. And then looking back at the video now, I know all of the women who were there, but I didn't know anyone at the time. I then went to Glasgow because I wanted to know more. And that was when Nicola Sturgeon, was it? No, it wasn't. That was was it Edinburgh or Glasgow? Anyway, Nicola Sturgeon kind of lost a role because of, well, not long after our event. And then I just kept going to the events and finding out more. And I read Hannah Barnes's book, A Time to Think, which was about the Tavistock and what they were doing to children, i.e. trans and away the gay. I don't know if you've read that book.
I haven't read it, but I know about the
Tavistock. Get the gist of what it's about. And then I was watching loads of podcasts like Helen Joyce and Kelly J. Keane on trigonometry and things like that. So that's, and then the WPATH files came out, and I just kept thinking this can't get any worse, and then it just did. So I don't know if you're familiar with the WPATH files. It's basically the world. What does it stand for? Something of transgender health. So it's the world expert, and there was some sort of link to this website promoting, I can't say this word, so forgive me if I get it wrong. Eunuchs, so basically castrated men had their penises removed, and that was a fetish. And so there's this link between a fetish about not having a penis and transgender health. It's just like, I just couldn't believe all the things that I was hearing. And
I've done the same sort of deep dive in terms of, I started listening to trigonometry and then the Helen Joyce stuff. And so, basically just any podcast or any YouTube channel where I think it's how I came across you, because I think I saw something about the Lindsay Smith case and I wanted to find out more. So I went on YouTube and I found your interview. And I think that's the journey for lots of people, and it becomes harder and harder to, and then I reconnected with lots of my old journalism friends. And this is the weird thing as well. So it's like turned everything upside. So I used to write for the Guardian, edit for the Guardian. One of my friends that I used to I used to see a lot of it, at that time, because she was also writing for them. We wrote about education and politics. You might remember this because it was all over Twitter, but she wrote a public letter to the managing editor of The Guardian recently because they keep reporting cases of crimes committed by men as she, and so she wasn't going to write for The Guardian because of this. And, so many Guardian columnists and people that we kind of look up to, they've left or been pushed out because of their views. And so
it's one of the worst papers, isn't it? The Guardian.
Yeah, it's awful. And it's like, I think I'm still connected with lots of people who used to write for The Guardian, around the same sort of time. And we're all just kind of like, what happened? Because we're all, would have described ourselves as left-leaning people who, and now we're just like, can't believe.
And now you're all right-wing Nazis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, now we've all turned But it's just, and all those people I've reconnected with, and actually they've been very, very supportive to me during this time and encouraging for me to kind of sort of go for it and introduce me to other people. And I have joined the Women's Rights Network. It's only been I kept meaning to do it. I kept thinking, well, I'll do that. And then it's only been about a week, but it's been amazing just like having a group of women who are a bit more local or whatever to
kind of, so you can connect with other women who are thinking the same, because you do start to think, have I been dropped on a different planet? And you start questioning yourself, don't you? Like,
am I a bigger?
Well, have I missed something? Have I missed something? Like everybody else says this is, and no. There's something about going against the grain when everybody else is saying something and you're saying, well, no, that's not right.
Yeah. One of my proudest things I'm most proud of in the last few weeks, because I've been hitting my personal Facebook quite hard over just not, pre this, and probably really annoying all of my in real life friends. But I've had a number of women say to me, like, I didn't really understand it now. I didn't really understand the real impact. So I thought, what's the harm? It's that kind of, what's the harm? If someone wants to say pregnant people, but blah, blah. And now I understand why it's a problem. Now, because I've explained it over, like, I feel like a broken record. Like, I had a heated conversation with a lawyer friend of mine, a man who just kind of didn't understand it. When I said to him, just think about the legal implications. Like, that anyone who says that they're a guy can go into any space, like, think it through, just follow it through logically. And he was like, yeah, I guess you have a point. I guess you've got, so, but I feel like a broken record sometimes. I'm repeating the same things over and over again. But it's very satisfying to have women who were not like thinking I was being awful or anything. They were just like, nah. So there's someone who called me, what did they say? I was over anxious about this issue. Said to me the other day, do you remember the St. John ambulance poster that's been doing the rounds? Said about giving CPR to people with breasts. Have you seen that?
Breasts, yes, I have seen that one.
So I shared that on my personal Facebook, and somebody who had only about a week ago had said my over anxious concern about gender ideology was like, actually, this is really quite sinister, isn't it? I was like, yes. It is actually quite sinister, but when you actually, really kind of think it through and follow it through to its logical conclusion. So, I mean, that does feel good to know that even a handful of people have been able to say, actually, now I see the problem.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's worth being called a Nazi, a bigot, a transphobe, a xenophobe.
It's really interesting. I think this is possibly to do with like algorithms and stuff, because for me, I was aware that things had changed since the election, because I think women made a lot of noise in the election period. And obviously I stood for the Party of Women, and there was 16 of us. None of us had any experience of politics. The party was like formed in February last year. So it was brand new. It was only a few months old, and we took part in a snap election, which some of the bigger parties didn't field any candidates because it was such a short time scale that they had, and we got 5,077 votes between us. So we did amazingly well, and it wasn't just us. It was like the likes of Helen Joyce and all of those women. They were all shouting about women's rights, and so I was saying to my husband, well, I'm in this bubble. I think everyone's talking about women's rights, but is it just because I'm in a bubble? What do you think? What's the talking points? And he said, it's immigration and it's women. That's what people are talking about. So I think it did really change after the election, and there was more women speaking up after the election. But obviously in certain pockets, it's worse than other places.
Yeah.
And I think it's certain industries, isn't it?
Yeah, I think because I'm in a creative industry, I think traditionally there's more people with more sort of left. I don't even know what to call it now, because I know turned upside down.
I would call it woke.
Yeah, well,
it's woke, isn't it? it's critical race theory, and it's intersectional feminism, it's intersectionality, it's that stuff.
Yeah. And so I think there is more of that in, because I would tend to have more clients that were kind of in creative industries, where I'm talking to other clients who say I can't speak up. It's generally if they're serving those sort of creative industries. So it is tougher, and I wasn't expecting there to be no pushback at all. But I think, but also the part that surprises me as well is that like they're really good at giving it out, these people, but they can't.
No, they can't. And to be honest, everything that they say about us, they are guilty of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. It's not us, it's them. They are projecting.
I had
Do you know what I mean?
patiently explain to somebody who was outraged that I'd shared the screenshots of their public post on Instagram, on my Instagram stories. It's like, you do realise that when you publish something publicly on the internet, we all open ourselves up. This interview that we're doing now, we in doing it, we know that potentially someone could come along and take it into something that we say, even if it wasn't how we intended it or whatever, and have an opinion about it. And we can't control that. We can't control what we say about it. Even if we think it's mean or nasty or whatever, we can't control it. And I would never remove anything. That's it. The other thing, they like blocking, don't they? Like,
yeah.
I would never, maybe partly, sorry, one of my cats is just onto there. I would never, maybe it's the journalist in me, but I would never remove a negative comment. Like, unless it was like, it'd have to be really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
Because
I tend to only block people if they're personal. If they get personal and start attacking me, then I'll protect myself. But
I even, sorry, I've just got to let this, sorry, they're just very demanding, these cats. They'd be like, I even would leave things that were quite personal about me. I suppose there's probably a certain line, but
I didn't delete the comments. I just blocked them so they couldn't do it again.
But blocking somebody because they disagreed with you is
I wouldn't do that.
Because, and they're like, it's outrageous that you've reshared what you posted in public for everybody to see. Like how is that outrageous, and how is that, it's bullying? And it's like, well, like posting say doing a post and blocking someone so they don't know, they're going to find out that they're a Nazi or whatever. It's pretty bullying. But if they get screenshots of that and tell somebody you did it, like the thinking behind it is just absolutely bizarre, and the viciousness of it as well. Like, it's personal as well. Like, it wasn't, there's me trying to calmly explain, if somebody's saying, but what about transgender men? I'm like, well, they're women. They're actually biological women, so blah, 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 and I'm although I'm like I'm trying to calmly explain it, but it's just personal. You're a disgusting person. You make me sick. You're weaponizing your miscarriage. It's personal. And I think it's because these arguments are very difficult to defend with a reasoned argument.
Of course they are.
And people go around in circles, don't they? And they normally come back to, but the problem is male violence. So, you actually look.
And trans women are men.
Yeah. That's why we need to make sure that we don't just let
anyone get it, don't they?
Men totally get it, yeah. Men totally get it.
I was going to say, the people saying it nearly get it. They're like, well, trans women aren't the problem, it's men. And I'm like, what's the difference? There is no difference. They're all men. You can't change your sex. I think I did get a comment in person after the hustings that I did.
Oh, right.
So it was in the local church where I went to Brownies. And this woman came up to me afterwards and she said, "You make me feel ashamed to be a woman." And I just laughed. I couldn't. I mean, I didn't know what she was going to say, and it just caught me off guard, and I laughed. Yeah. And then the man came over and said, "Oh, I would vote for you, but I've already," because there was such a short time scale, he'd already put in his postal vote. So, so we missed some of the voters who we would have got because they'd already voted by post. Because the timing was just so, but they did that on purpose, didn't they?
Have you noticed?
It's mainly online, isn't it?
Have you noticed? Because someone asked me about this the other day. Vanya de Grunwald. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Do you know her? She has a podcast which is kind of to do with employment. She had James Esser, I think, on there. And
I've come across her. Yeah.
she
I don't know her well, though.
she was asking me, like, what do you think, where do you think most of the abuse is coming from, or what's motivating it? But then we were talking about, you know, basically it's millennials and Gen Z. Like, also I have a teenage daughter, and I'm trying to think how I can be diplomatic about it now. But there's a lot of pressure, I think, to go along with these ideologies.
Now, I have heard that the younger ones who are coming through are having none of it.
That's good to hear.
But I don't know if it's true, because I don't know anybody, like I'm not close to anyone in that age range, so I don't know. But that's what I've heard. The next generation are just like, they're seeing their older brothers and sisters, and they're like, not following that, so they'll rebel against it, won't they?
You know, Connie Shaw,
a
young girl who got sacked, or suspended, I should say, from Leeds Student Radio, but she posted the other day about being uninvited to a party, and so I reshared this for her to support her on LinkedIn, and then people are going, well, you know, people are entitled to uninvite people, and I said, look, I've got a daughter of similar age, like, and if she was telling me that they were uninviting their housemates to parties because they had a different view, I'd be want to have a word with her and say, look, you know, you have to be more tolerant of people's views. Somebody sent me a picture. I had to ask Connie what it meant, but someone sent me a picture of Katie Hopkins with an arrow on her head, and I said, I don't know what this means. I think it's probably a bad thing, as apparently it means white women problems. So Katie Hopkins with a target on her head means white women problems. But yeah, so she was. I was saying to this young girl, do you know what? I'd be really proud to know someone who stood up for women's rights. It wasn't going down very well with this young.
This is a thing, and I've had quite a lot of, because you know, not pushback, but bemusement. I have to be careful where I say it. Well, if I can't be bothered with the flack that day. But since basically 2020, I had my head down. I was just getting on with my life. I was ignoring the news because I didn't know what was wrong with it, but it just felt off. Do you know what I mean? I just didn't like where it was going. It didn't feel real. It felt like a pantomime, and I didn't want to be sucked into it. It felt like an ongoing, a perpetual cycle of fear, and I just didn't want to think about it. So I stopped watching the news. I had my head down, and then the lockdowns came, and I was like, what on earth is this? And that is the point where I raised my head up and started looking at what was going on. And I started to think about all the people who've ever been cancelled, and I started listening to their voices and what they'd actually been saying, rather than the opinions of the media, which is what I've been told to think. And you know, you hear people all the time saying things like, oh, well, I don't agree with everything so-and-so says. Well, do you know what? I've been with my husband for 21 years and we don't agree with each other on everything. Why you would think that I agree with everything that, for example, Katie Hopkins says, I don't know.
Yeah. This is something else I found absolutely baffling at the moment. But so Donald Trump, not a Donald Trump fan. I don't know what, if I was living in the US, God knows what he would do. Like, but
saying you feel uncomfortable even talking about him in an objective way. So back in when he was elected last time, I would have said, I thought, oh my God, and the media was saying things like, oh, he said this, and I believed that he was a complete buffoon. But actually, this time I've been listening to him, and he sounds reasonable.
Well, the thing is that I still think, I mean, he's bonkers, if you know, like, I don't even know where to start, but he's got men out of women's sports, right? So I think I posted something on Facebook, which was like, look, like, what the worst thing is, it took Donald Trump, you know, to do this. Like, all the people who've gone before, who you would think would care about this, and women, you know, I'm under no illusion that he like really cares. I imagine it's, you know, he's a vote winner, but, you know, certainly an understanding of what people care about and what might be coming if you don't if you don't sort
Yeah.
of deal with it. But I don't know if you remember, but there was after the American election, an email was leaked that came from the managing editor of The Guardian. And it basically said, I can't believe it. I thought it was outrageous. It said, basically, I know you might be, basically it was offering counselling to anyone who might be struggling with the result of the American election.
That's not what counselling's for.
So you're like, so my attitude would be generally anyway, where you're a journalist, your job is to report the news. And like, if you're upset about an election result, you have to put that aside and you get on with your job.
I can understand them being upset about reporting on a massive disaster, like an explosion or a terrorist attack or an earthquake.
Yeah.
The results of an election.
So you just think, so somebody who's had to sales support, like you say, that's where somebody might need counselling because they've experienced something really, really traumatic. And even then, though, having been a journalist and having reported on some things that are in order to do the job, there's a part of you that has to shut down and there's a part of you that has to be able to hear and see, like really, I'm not to say it doesn't affect you, but there's a part of you that has to be able to do that.
You have to kind of dissociate.
Or whatever. Yeah. You wouldn't be able to do the job and you wouldn't be able to, you have to be able to keep yourself together. And the idea that these people would be like too upset to like do their job and have to have counselling and stuff. But the bigger part for me, so everyone was going, well, what's the problem with that? Because we was getting into an internet discussion about it. And first of all, people would say, oh, that's not true. But between my, colleagues who we were able to produce the email, so we had the proof of it. But it was more like, what must it be like to go to work at The Guardian, both here or in the US, and know that you back Trump? Because you're entitled to do that, just because you work for a left-wing newspaper, that doesn't, and there's so many different functions there. There's accountants, there's HR people, there's people who fix the bill, like there's all people from all walks of life who work there, not just, journalists. And how uncomfortable would it be to go to work and feel that everyone's like, boo-hoo, in counselling, because like, you would feel like you had to hide it, wouldn't you? Like you'd have to hide. I mean, not that, I think you should go to work, be talking about your politics, but to feel like it was something to be ashamed of. And I think, oh, that is...
Yeah, but this is the thing, though. It's been encouraged to talk about some kinds of politics.
Sometimes, yeah, but not. Yeah. And I was saying to people, doesn't that remind you of something? Like where you have certain type of politics and you can't admit to it. You have to keep it secret. And people, you're just being over the top or whatever. But I'm like, really? And so, and also, like, if you work for, I don't know, Marks and Spencer's or John Lewis or something, I'm pretty sure that their policy would, it would be against their policy not to bring politics into the workplace.
I don't know. Have you not heard what's happening in Marks and Spencer's?
Oh, God.
Well, the changing rooms.
Changing rooms, aren't they?
Yeah, it's the changing rooms. So if that's happening in the changing rooms, then what else is going on?
Yeah, it may well be that it's from up top. There was something where they had sort of like gender neutral things outside the... I don't know about you, but I've always really hated... It puts me off going to Marks and Spencer's to buy a bra because they put like sofas outside it that men can sit on. And I think, I don't want to have a man sitting on a sofa outside the changing room.
Yeah, I mean... I'm even thinking of the time where I was in Asda and I was looking at underwear and there was a man standing next to me looking at underwear with his partner and I felt so uncomfortable. I didn't want to buy them.
Yeah.
I don't want a man standing next to me. Not even my husband. I want to look at underwear on me.
I think it should be, my husband would be far too embarrassed to stand
exactly.
in those.
Like that's what men used to be. Men used to be embarrassed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, I've seen men in Valentine's Day like filling up like baskets. So I'm like, oh, away, like, because I don't want to be picking up bras and looking at them with a man. But then, Marks and Spencer actually have these sofas outside, and you just think, go away, go and look in another shop or something. Why are you hanging around outside waiting for your partner to try a bra on? But yeah, they had some sort of like gender neutral type pictures up or something, didn't they, outside or whatever?
Well, there was a big campaign because there was I think there was mixed sex changing rooms and they were trying to stop it. But yeah, that I'm not sure what's happened with that campaign. It seems to have died down now. But I mean, it takes a lot of energy to try and raise awareness of these things and then...
Yeah.
But I think the changing rooms were just curtains. There was only curtains separating each, like, person getting changed, but they were mixed sex.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really bad, and it's everywhere as well. And the schools, the prisons, the sports, and everything. It's just all.
But I do think that Trump getting in has shaken it.
It has.
I look sometimes, I think, what, because it seems to be so inconsistent or whatever. But it's shaking things up enough. Yeah.
The woman who wrote the executive order has used the language of Kelly J. Keane in her campaign, the Adult Human Female campaign. So yeah, it's she's done a lot of good. She goes all around the world, and she's been called a Nazi and all sorts. And I think she struggles more not with TRAs, but with women because they are the ones who started all the terrible things about her. Because they sing Posey Park as a Nazi all the time at the events that we're at. But that's why, and what happened in Melbourne, where in Australia, where the Nazis actually came to the rally and then they got the blame for it. It's like, well, they weren't with us. It just turned up. We can't, they weren't on our side, but they got accused of it. And then there was a defamation case with Moira Demon because she got kicked out of the party and she won. And then, of course, she went to New Zealand, and I don't know if you saw what happened in New Zealand.
I don't know. Which case
Jane nearly got crushed to death. She got covered in soup. Yeah. So that was really bad. And then they had to cancel the rest of it. So, yeah, it's been...
Things are really bad in Australia.
She's changed... Sorry?
Things are really bad in Australia, aren't they?
Really bad, yeah. Yeah. So I've interviewed Sal Grover, and I've had a woman called Nicole of the Lesbian Action Group, on as well. So, yeah, it is quite bad down there. But I think the things that are happening in America are going to make it better for us. But I think it's going to take a while because obviously they're being, their point of view is being threatened by Trump in America. And so they're ramping it up here.
Yeah.
They really are ramping it up here. I can see it. They're screaming. Because that's when it's most dangerous, isn't it? When they're losing, and they are losing. And I think that's what you've witnessed. Because they're losing, they're getting more vicious.
Yeah.
Because they haven't got an argument. It's it doesn't make sense.
There is no reasoned argument, or it just becomes circular and I think it's just becoming more and more obvious. But I think there might be sort of tough times to come. Have you found it's affected? Because you're a counsellor, aren't you? Has it affected your business? It sounds wrong to talk about a business, but it is a business, isn't it?
I've got a couple of businesses, and that's one of the things that I had to consider when I decided to stand for election. But that gave us protection because you can't, that is part of democracy. And so I had that protection. I actually run a care business. That's the biggest part of what I do. I did actually have a complaint against me, but nothing came of it because it's the leaflets that were put out were designed to grab attention. So they were quite, but it was all fact, and it got passed by the Electoral Commission, and it got passed by Royal Mail, and they'll have a long history of having to sort of check to make sure the materials are within, free speech and democracy and stuff like that. So it got passed by that, and that was the biggest thing that people were upset about was the leaflet, because it said it was a single issue party, and there was only 4 lines of the manifesto, which was no woman has a penis, no man has a vagina, non-binary is nonsense, and transition in children is profound abuse. And that was the bit that really upsets them. And I don't know if you heard about what happened in Darlington last week on International Women's Day. A lot of the women from the Northeast went to this, I think it's council-run building.
I did see the video. Yeah.
and they got asked to leave. You know, women being asked to leave an event on International Women's Day.
I know.
It's just,
I know. And
you couldn't make this stuff up.
I've got a friend who's part of a women's group, and she said they have to meet in secret because if people knew that they were meeting for the purpose they were, then, you know. And again, you sort of think people look at this and think, oh, this is all absolutely fine. You know, women are too frightened to speak up, but there's no problem here. You know, they're just being hysterical, silly women, aren't they?
Yeah.
Have you worried about the effect on like sort of family or friends or anything like that? Because that's something that I worried about. You know,
there's nobody. Like, basically, I don't really have very much to do with my family, and that happened a long time ago. So there's and I think they do have different views, but I don't really see them, so it doesn't matter. And my husband's family, they don't really know what's going on in the world. So, and then there is there's people who I know, mainly women in business, who I do know, but it wasn't that I wasn't so close to them that I was worried about losing the relationship. Like, obviously it's not very nice, and I'd rather not fall out with people. But there wasn't anyone that I was really close to going through this. And actually, there was some people that I didn't know that were going through this until afterwards.
Right.
You know, because people then told me, did you know so-and-so's son or daughter is trans? And I was like, oh, I didn't know. No. But at least I think 4 women blocked me on Facebook when I announced that I was standing in the election. One woman really was very upset with me and was messaging me, and I said, I'm more than happy to discuss it, but I don't really want to do it on social media, so would you like to meet up for a cuppa and we'll have a chat? And she wouldn't. She was just so upset. But
it must be, I can't say that doesn't bother me, because it's not so much about what people think about me, but if you truly believe that and you think you're doing the right thing, or, you know, it must be really, really hard to watch people say things that, you know, but at the same time, I've really grappled with that, but at the same time, does that mean you shouldn't speak up? Because a lot of this comes down to hurting people's feelings, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's harmful. So you have to speak out. You've got a duty of care.
And so when I think about challenges that I've had in my life in various scenarios, it's always the same thing. It's always like me speaking up about things, because I think if I don't speak up about this, somebody might get hurt. But I do feel there's a lot of people who are happy to they're more concerned with, like, not rocking the boat or not upsetting people, or being like
there's definitely people like that.
I genuinely understand. I've got so much understanding for people who say, I really feel like I can't speak up, and I'm like, don't worry about it. The other thing as well is that something I always say to people is, like, if anyone was to come to me and they say I've changed my mind, they wouldn't get the treatment that I got from I'd be like, I'll buy you a drink to celebrate. You know, it's like, there's no judgment for me. Like, there's no judgment for me if you've been, you know, defending this, and then you suddenly go, do you know what, not suddenly, but you think it's really bad. You know, I'm like just really pleased that somebody's understood it. But yeah, it's really tough, because none of us like to be disliked, and you know that, because there's a few people kind of in my life or in the sort of periphery who have got trans children or relatives, and it's not nice to think that people think you're hateful. It's just not nice at all. But at the same time,
they know that you're not, though.
Do you think so? Do you think? Because I always think the people they actually do believe it, and I sort of think I'm all right with people not liking me for it.
The thing is, I'm always upsetting people for telling the truth. That's the sort of, I can't help it. That is who I am. I say what I see, and over the years I've tried to be a bit more sensitive, but I still say things that I don't realise that people don't want to hear. I just do. It's part of me. Can't help it. So I'm used to it. You know, and I think I'm being nice, but then they're like, because it's usually, well, the way my husband puts it is that what I do is I hold a mirror up to them, and then they don't like the reflection. So it's not about me and what I've said, it's about how they feel about themselves, and they can't hear it. Because, like, I've always been the sort of person who wants to find the truth. I want to know what's going on. If there's a problem, I want to know what the root cause is so I can sort it out and resolve it. Because if you pretend that it's something else, then you can't ever resolve it. And I know that it's impossible to get to the root cause of everything. You can't.
I was thinking about this the other day because I've had a few situations which are not related to this, which have caused me a lot of stress recently, which is like, not that I needed that on top of that, but it all came back to the same thing, is that, like, if somebody's upset with me or I've had a disagreement with someone, I want to talk to them. I want to have a conversation with them, because I'm pretty sure that if I sit down with them, that they're probably going to say something to me that maybe I said something or did something that I didn't realise upset them. And I'm sorry for that, and I'm sorry, I'll be mindful. But equally, there's probably misunderstanding on both sides, and there's probably, but you have to have that hard conversation, because if you don't have that, if you're not willing, and so, but I find just people generally, I'm really happy to have, not happy, I don't enjoy it, but I prefer to have that difficult conversation. Try and understand it from their point of view, whatever. But I think this is the thing, I think, with this issue, is, for me, it feels like one big avoidance of having a hard conversation. Because if we just say, right, there's only two sexes, biological men and women, so women's spaces are women's spaces, only then can you have that conversation. And some people don't believe you should have it at all. Only then can you even, a conversation like, well, what if someone's got a gender recognition statement or whatever? You can only have that conversation if you're straight down the line saying only two sexes, male and female, while you're still pandering around saying, oh, anyone can say it's about identity. It's about, I saw something earlier where somebody was saying, it was saying something like, gender is about the mind, or something was, gender is about the mind. So the mind's about biology. So that means that
They are biological. They are a biological woman because they are biological.
Yeah, but some kind of crazy, like, I think, no, unless if we can be honest, we can say, look, there are only two sexes, male and female.
And you can't change.
So women's spaces are women's spaces. However, there you can, if you want to have that difficult conversation, okay, well, in what case would you make an exception? And this is not about people having to show their genitals. People will say that, don't they? It's not about that.
You don't need to see genitals to know what's a man and what's a woman.
No.
Who's a man and who's a woman.
Having that hard line. I mean, I know there's people like KJ Keane who would just say there's no, but I'm probably not in the same place. But I think you can't have that conversation unless you're starting.
It's because she's been doing it for so long and she knows so much about it. And the more I know about it, I'm pretty much, like, with my views, that they pretty much align with hers. Not on everything, obviously, but generally, I usually agree with what she says, but I understand that other people have different opinions, and that's okay. And it's about bringing people along with you, if you can. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's because the more I find out about the cause of, basically it's the trans woman, so the older men who have autogynephilia, and that's the root cause of it, basically. It's them, and too much porn and sissy porn, which is horrific. And I don't know if you've crossed into that and found out about that, but
I've read it all. Yeah,
it's horrible.
And I think that's the thing. I think that the general public who are not following this maybe as closely, like, I was surprised when I wrote my first article about what does it mean to be a courageous woman, and a client who's now blocked me, actually, I think, and subscribed to my email list, said, who are the Darlington nurses? And I was like, wow, that's a really high profile media. I'd understand you not knowing about the sort of things we were just talking about then, but but not knowing about a really high profile, but, and I'm not judging people for that. It's just how it is, isn't it? But it's like, if people are not knowing about some of those high profile, like, Sal Grover or whatever, then it's going to take a long time to get to that place.
Well, the thing is, though, it's deliberately confusing because they've conflated not just the LGB with the TQ pedophiles, but they've also conflated, like, the word trans. It used to be that it was transsexual, or transvestite, but now it's just trans, and that word applies to middle-aged men who might, like, cross-dress or whatever else, and it conflates also young people who are being groomed and confused, and then, you know, and then where's the line about who's watching too much porn and who, like, I just, yeah.
I've had to like put a few people straight in the nicest possible way about, because who says things like, well, you're homophobic.
Well, the trans thing is homophobic, and they don't get that.
And I'm saying, like, do you realise that, you know, there's a big chunk of the gay community that are so upset about this as well.
Yeah. It's the cotton ceiling. You just explain that to them.
And you kind of like, you know, people who I know quite, oh, how well, you know, well, isn't that, no, because that's two completely different things. And that is the thing, there is so much confusion about it. And I think one of the things that, again, partly took me so long to speak up is, well, not so long, but I felt, by the time I did speak up, I felt confident in my arguments, in my knowledge, because I have like spent like 12 to 18 months just obsessing over it. And, you know, there are things that come up and I know about more than others, but I feel like I've got enough knowledge to confidently, you know, put an argument to somebody.
Yeah. But
I understand why other people don't, because I feel like I've almost like done like half a degree in it or something. Like
exactly.
That's part of the problem, isn't it? It's so confusing.
Yeah. And that's why I think Kelly J. Keane says things like, just say, you don't need to write an essay. You just need to say, he's a man. He can't come in because he's a man. That's all you need to say, you know. And when you put it like that, it's really simple.
Yeah. I think someone put on one of my posts, like, men can't get pregnant, end of it. Is that, isn't it? You know, and there's me like spending, you know, like 3 paragraphs. And I
I think you do need to know so that you can refute what they say, because otherwise they'll tie up in knots and go and
come back with all this like stuff. And half the time is when my intersectional feminist friends were like going for me. The funniest thing was, so before I got blocked, Connie Shawby shared the post. She got blocked as well because she shared it. Before she got blocked, like, the comments were really funny because the kind of people who were commenting on it, they weren't like, but it was like, I don't know, like gender identity bingo. It was just like some of the phrases that were used were absolutely hilarious. And
the seahorses things come back and clownfish.
Yeah, and you sort of think, oh God, the sort of some of the, you know, the arguments that they come out with, you're just like, do you realise what you've just said? It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Women aren't seahorses.
Like, I can't actually believe it. And there was I don't know if you saw, I think she might have blocked me as well, but there's a lady who wrote this post about being intersectional feminist, and I rewrote it. But did you see that one, or has it been?
I don't think so.
I felt bad about it because I rewrote it, and what she was really saying, which is basically I'm intolerant to anyone else's opinion other than my own. I've sent it to you, which is basically what she was saying, but dressed up in all this kind of like intersectional
language,
whatever. And I signed it off for Veruca Salt. I felt really guilty about that because, but it was
like funny. Like, you have to make fun of it.
But it was like I will stamp my foot and like everyone must agree with me. You know, in what world do you think that anyone who disagrees with you block them or you insult them or you're like, what is going on? It's just like, it's completely mad, isn't it?
It is. Well, Janet, we've been talking for over an hour, so I'll wind it up. But thank you so much for coming on my podcast. It's been a really interesting conversation, and I'm sorry that you've had so much trouble. But let's see if I can help you. Let's see if we can connect afterwards and kind of see how else we can help each other.
It has connected with me with some amazing women. So
that's the benefit of it, isn't it? All the amazing women who you end up getting to know and make friends with because of it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you. I feel it's really nice because considering that, like, I found your podcast as part of my journey. It was nice, you know, when Damie popped up.
It's good. It's good to hear that it's been found. So thank you so much.